I thought I'd lost everything. My business, my reputation, my family. But what I didn't know was that my brother hadn't just stolen from me. He'd been hiding something far worse, something that would change everything. My name is Ryan, and this is the story of how I went from successful entrepreneur to bankrupt and broken in less than 6 months, and how one accidental discovery brought it all crashing down on the person I trusted most. Let me take you back to where it all started, because none of this makes sense without understanding how close we used to be. Trevor and I grew up in a small town in Oregon. We weren't rich, but we weren't poor either. Our dad worked construction, Mom was a nurse. They taught us the value of hard work, honesty, and family. Those 3 things were sacred in our house. Trevor was 2 years younger than me, and growing up we were inseparable. I taught him how to ride a bike, helped him with homework, defended him when kids at school gave him trouble for being the quiet kid. When I was 25, I started a digital marketing agency. It wasn't anything huge at first, just me, a laptop, and a lot of late nights learning everything I could about SEO, social media management, content creation. I worked from our parents' garage for the first year. Trevor was in college then, studying business. He'd come home on weekends and I'd show him what I was working on. He was always interested, always asking questions. The business started growing faster than I expected. By year 2, I had 5 clients. By year 3, I had 15 and had to rent a small office space. I was making good money, enough to finally move out and get my own place. I was proud, maybe too proud. I thought I'd figured it all out. Trevor graduated college around that time, and he was struggling to find work. The economy wasn't great, and his degree in business management wasn't opening as many doors as he'd hoped. I watched him send out dozens of applications, go to interview after interview, and come back disappointed every time. It broke my heart. This was my little brother, the kid I'd always protected. So I offered him a job. It seemed like the perfect solution. He needed work. I needed help. The agency was getting too big for me to handle alone. I brought him on as an operations manager. I taught him everything: client relations, project management, how to handle the finances, how to pitch to new clients. He was good at it too, really good. He had this way of talking to people that made them trust him immediately. Clients loved him. For 2 years, everything was perfect. We were making more money than either of us had ever imagined. We moved into a bigger office, hired 6 employees, expanded our services. Trevor and I would stay late sometimes, just the 2 of us, talking about the future. We talked about opening offices in other cities, maybe even franchising the model. We dreamed big. I made him a partner after those 2 years, gave him 30% of the company. Mom and Dad were so proud. They'd talk about their boys, running a successful business together, living the American dream. I remember Dad pulling me aside at a family barbecue and saying, "You did good, Ryan. Taking care of your brother like that, that's what family does." I wish I could go back and warn myself. I wish I could tell that version of me to pay more attention, to not be so trusting, to protect myself. But hindsight is cruel like that. The first sign that something was wrong, I didn't even recognize it as a sign. It was small. Trevor started having private meetings with clients without telling me. When I'd ask about them, he'd say they were just check-ins, nothing important. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? This was my brother. Then he started being more involved in the finances. He said he wanted to learn that side of the business better, wanted to take some of the pressure off me. I was grateful. I hated dealing with the accounting anyway. I gave him access to all the bank accounts, showed him how everything worked. I trusted him completely. About 6 months after I made him partner, he came to me with a proposal. He wanted to restructure the company, said we could save on taxes, be more efficient, scale faster. He'd put together this whole presentation with charts and projections. It looked professional, legitimate. He said we needed to create a new LLC, transfer the assets, make him the majority stakeholder for tax purposes. It would all still be our company, just structured differently. I should have hired a lawyer to look at it. I should have asked more questions. But I didn't. I signed the papers he put in front of me. I trusted my little brother. 3 months later, everything fell apart. It started with clients calling my personal phone, asking why I wasn't responding to their emails. I had no idea what they were talking about. I checked my work email. I'd been removed from the company email system. I called Trevor, confused, thinking it was some kind of technical error. He didn't answer. I drove to the office. The locks had been changed. I stood there in the parking lot, trying my key over and over like somehow it would magically start working again. One of our employees, Sarah, came out. She looked uncomfortable, wouldn't make eye contact. She told me Trevor had called a meeting that morning and told everyone I was no longer with the company, that I'd decided to pursue other opportunities, that he was the sole owner now. I couldn't breathe. I called Trevor again and again and again. He finally answered on the 7th call. "Ryan, I was going to call you today," he said, like we were talking about getting lunch. "This isn't personal, it's just business. The company needed stronger leadership and I've been carrying most of the weight anyway. The restructuring we did, you signed over your shares. It's all legal. You should talk to a lawyer if you have questions." Then he hung up. I sat in my car for 2 hours, just numb. I couldn't process what had just happened. This was Trevor, my brother, the kid I taught to ride a bike, the person I'd given a chance when no one else would. I did hire a lawyer. Cost me $3,000 just for the consultation. She reviewed all the documents I'd signed. Her face told me everything before she even spoke. The restructuring agreement I'd signed, it wasn't what Trevor had told me it was. I hadn't just agreed to a new tax structure. I'd signed over my entire stake in the company to him. The language was buried in legal jargon, spread across multiple pages. I'd been so trusting, I hadn't read it carefully. I'd just signed where he told me to sign. "This is legally binding," the lawyer said. "You can try to fight it, claim fraud or misrepresentation, but that's going to be expensive, time-consuming, and there's no guarantee you'll win. He'll argue you had every opportunity to read what you were signing. He'll say you had the chance to get legal counsel and chose not to. The business I'd built from nothing, gone. Just like that. But it got worse. I started getting calls from creditors. Apparently, there were business debts I didn't know about, loans taken out in the company's name. The old company, the one I was still legally tied to. Trevor had been borrowing money, a lot of it, right before the restructuring. And because of how everything was set up, I was personally liable. Within 3 months, I was being sued by 2 different lenders. My credit score, which had been excellent, dropped to nothing. I had to sell my car to pay legal fees. I moved back in with my parents at 32 years old. The shame of that, walking back into my childhood bedroom, sleeping in the same bed I'd had as a teenager, it was crushing. My parents didn't know what to do. Mom cried a lot. Dad got angry, wanted to confront Trevor, but I asked him not to. I didn't want to tear the family apart more than it already was. Trevor stopped coming to family dinners. Mom would call him, begging him to talk to me, to work things out. He told her I was bitter about the business not working out for me, that I was trying to turn everyone against him. Some of the extended family believed him. Cousins I'd grown up with stopped returning my calls. An uncle told me I needed to man up and stop blaming others for my failures. That hurt more than I expected. I couldn't sleep. I'd lie awake at night, replaying every conversation, every decision, trying to figure out where I went wrong. How did I miss this? Was Trevor planning this from the beginning, or did something change along the way? Did I do something to make him hate me? The worst part was the silence. Trevor wouldn't talk to me, wouldn't answer calls, wouldn't respond to texts. I'd see updates about the company on social media, him at networking events, posting about new clients, celebrating milestones. Milestones we should have been celebrating together. He'd erased me from the story completely. Like I'd never existed. Like those 5 years of building something together meant nothing. I started having panic attacks. The first one hit me in a grocery store. I was just buying milk and bread and suddenly I couldn't breathe, my chest was tight, I thought I was having a heart attack. A store employee called an ambulance. The ER doctor said it was anxiety, gave me a prescription and told me to see a therapist. I couldn't afford therapy. I got a job at a call center, $9 an hour, taking angry calls from customers about their cable bills. I'd gone from running a six-figure business to this. Some days I'd sit in my car during lunch break and just stare at nothing. Empty. I thought about giving up. Not in a dramatic way. I just thought about disappearing. Moving to another state, changing my name, starting over where nobody knew me or what had happened, where I wouldn't have to see the pity in my parents' eyes or avoid family gatherings because I couldn't stand the whispers. 6 months went by like that. Gray, shapeless months where every day felt the same. Before I continue, I just want to say, if you're finding this story meaningful, or if you've ever experienced betrayal like this, it would mean a lot if you could subscribe and leave a like. These stories are how people connect and realize they're not alone in what they've gone through. It genuinely helps get these stories to people who need to hear them. Okay, back to what happened next. It was a Saturday morning, early. I was at my parents' house. Couldn't sleep again. Dad was already up making coffee. We sat at the kitchen table in silence. He didn't try to cheer me up anymore. We'd moved past that. "I'm thinking about selling the cabin," he said suddenly. My parents owned a small cabin about 2 hours north, near the lake. They'd bought it 15 years ago, always talked about retiring there. Dad loved that place. "Why?" I asked. "Need the money," he said, not looking at me. "Medical bills are piling up. Your mother's medication. Insurance doesn't cover all of it." That's when it hit me. My parents were in their 60s. They should have been thinking about retirement, taking it easy. Instead, they were supporting their grown son who'd lost everything. I was a burden. "Dad, no. I'll figure something out. I'll get another job. Ryan." He looked at me then. "It's not your fault. Stop carrying this like it is." But it was my fault. I'd been stupid, trusting, naive. I'd handed my brother everything he needed to destroy me. That afternoon, I couldn't take it anymore. I drove to Trevor's house, the house he'd bought after taking over the company. Nice neighborhood, new construction, 2-car garage. I sat outside for 20 minutes trying to decide if I should knock. What would I even say? I didn't knock. I drove away. But something was different after that. The numbness started to crack. Underneath it was anger, real, burning anger. Not the explosive kind, the cold kind. The kind that makes you focused. I started looking into the company from the outside. I created a fake LinkedIn profile and connected with some of our old clients, the employees who were still there. I wasn't trying to sabotage anything. I just needed to understand. Needed to see what he'd built with what he'd stolen from me. The company was doing well, really well. Trevor had landed several major contracts, expanded the team, was getting written up in local business publications as a young entrepreneur to watch. Every article felt like a knife. Then I started noticing something odd. The company's public financial information, something wasn't adding up. The revenue numbers Trevor was reporting to the state didn't match what he was posting about on social media. He'd post about landing a $50,000 contract, but the quarterly reports showed way less income. At first, I thought maybe he was just exaggerating online, trying to look more successful than he was. But the more I looked, the stranger it got. There were gaps, inconsistencies. I let it go for a few weeks. It wasn't my business anymore. I needed to move on, but I couldn't. 2 months later, I was at my parents' house again, helping Dad clean out the garage. We were moving boxes, and I found some old business files of mine that I'd stored there. Contracts, receipts, old financial records from the early days of the company. I was about to throw them away when I saw a folder I didn't recognize. It was full of documents from the restructuring, papers I'd signed, paperwork Trevor had given me. I almost put it in the trash pile, but something made me sit down and actually read through it all. Really read it this time now that I understood legal language better. There were bank statements in there, accounts I didn't remember seeing before. I looked closer. They were business accounts, opened during the restructuring period. Accounts with my name on them. Accounts I'd apparently been made a signatory on when I signed all those papers. But here's the thing. There were deposits I didn't recognize. Large deposits, money coming in from clients, but the amounts were different from what I remembered us charging. And the dates, some of these transactions were from after Trevor had locked me out. My hands started shaking. I spent the next 3 hours going through every page in that folder. There were invoices to clients showing one amount, but bank deposits showing a different, higher amount, cash payments that were never recorded, multiple sets of books. Trevor had been running 2 sets of financial records. I sat on the garage floor with papers spread around me, my heart pounding. This wasn't just stealing the business. This was fraud, tax fraud. He'd been underreporting income, pocketing the difference, and hiding it from the IRS. And because of the timing, because of how the restructuring had worked, some of these transactions were tied to accounts I was still legally connected to. I didn't know what to do. I sat there until it got dark, just thinking. This was my brother. If I reported this, his life would be over. Prison, maybe. Definitely financial ruin. The family would implode. Mom would never forgive me. But he'd destroyed my life without hesitation. He'd taken everything from me and slept just fine at night. I gathered all the documents and took them home. Spent the next week going through everything with a fine-tooth comb, cross-referencing dates, making notes. The more I found, the worse it got. This had been going on for at least 2 years, maybe longer, hundreds of thousands of dollars hidden from the government. I made copies of everything, organized it all into a clear timeline. Then I sat on it for another month. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. This decision was tearing me apart. Part of me wanted to burn it all, forget I'd ever seen it, try to move on with my life. Part of me wanted to march into Trevor's office and throw it in his face. I kept thinking about what Dad had said, about how it wasn't my fault. But if I had this information and did nothing, wouldn't that make me complicit? I also thought about the me from 2 years ago. The guy who'd trusted his brother completely, who'd been so proud to give him an opportunity. That guy was an idiot, but he didn't deserve what happened to him. I made the call on a Tuesday morning. I contacted a lawyer, different from the one I'd consulted before. Told him I'd discovered evidence of tax fraud. He looked at everything I had, sat back in his chair and whistled low. "This is serious," he said. "Federal level serious. If you report this, there's going to be an investigation. It's going to get messy. Are you prepared for that?" I wasn't, but I did it anyway. The lawyer helped me submit everything to the IRS, explained that as a whistleblower I might be protected, might even be entitled to a percentage of what they recovered. I told him I didn't care about the money, I just wanted the truth to come out. "They'll want to interview you," he said. "Multiple times. Your brother will know it came from you. There's no way around that." "I know," I said. For 6 weeks, nothing happened. I started to think maybe the IRS had looked at it and decided it wasn't worth pursuing. Life went on. I kept working at the call center, kept living with my parents, kept existing in that gray space. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, I got a call from my mom. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. "What did you do?" she kept saying. "Ryan, what did you do?" Federal agents had shown up at Trevor's office that morning, served him with a warrant, seized his computers, his files, everything. The company was shut down pending investigation. Employees sent home. Trevor had called Mom, panicking, asking if I'd put the government on him. "Did you?" Mom asked me. "Did you do this to your brother?" I couldn't answer her. I just hung up. Dad called next. He was calmer, but I could hear the disappointment. "Whatever's happening, we'll figure it out as a family. But Ryan, this needs to stop. This war between you and Trevor, it needs to stop." "He started it," I said, and I hated how childish I sounded. I don't care who started it. I'm ending it. You're both my sons. Figure this out. He hung up too. I sat alone in my room listening to my phone buzz with texts from family members. Most of them angry, some confused, none of them supportive. I turned my phone off. 3 days later, Trevor showed up at my parents' house. I heard his car pull up, heard him knock, heard my mom answer the door, her voice breaking with relief. "Oh, baby, come in, come in." I stayed in my room, listened to them talk in the living room. Heard Trevor crying, actually crying, telling Mom he didn't understand what was happening, that someone was trying to frame him, that he'd built that company honestly and now it was being destroyed. I heard Mom comfort him. Heard Dad's lower voice, asking questions I couldn't quite make out. Then I heard my name. "Ryan did this," Trevor said. "He's been trying to sabotage me since I took over the company. He can't handle that I was more successful. This is revenge." "That's not true," I said, stepping out of my room before I could stop myself. Everyone turned to look at me. Trevor's eyes were red. He looked smaller somehow. Broken. "You reported me to the IRS, he said. Not a question. "I found your records, the real ones. I know what you've been doing." "You don't know anything. You're just bitter and sad, and you're trying to drag me down with you." "You committed fraud, Trevor, for years. I have proof." Mom made a sound like she'd been hit. "Both of you, stop. Please stop." "Tell them," I said to Trevor. "Tell them about the 2 sets of books. Tell them about the unreported income. Tell them how you stole from me and then stole from the government." Trevor's jaw clenched. For a second, I thought he was going to admit it. But then his expression changed, hardened. "You're pathetic," he said. "You couldn't make it on your own, so you're trying to destroy me? But it won't work. I have lawyers. I'll fight this. And when it's over, you'll have nothing. Like always." He left. The door slammed so hard it rattled the windows. Mom turned to me, tears streaming down her face. "Are you happy now? Is this what you wanted? Your brother could go to prison?" "He destroyed my life first," I said quietly. "So you destroy his back? That's not who I raised you to be, Ryan." She walked away. Dad followed her. I stood there alone in the living room, wondering if I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life. The investigation took 4 months. During that time, I was interviewed 6 times. Had to go through everything I'd found, explain how I'd found it, confirm dates and documents. The IRS agents were thorough, professional, and gave nothing away about what they were finding. I wasn't allowed to talk about the investigation, couldn't tell anyone what was happening. So when family members called asking what I'd told the government, why I was doing this to Trevor, I couldn't defend myself. I just had to take it. Trevor hired expensive lawyers, started a legal defense fund claiming he was being targeted unfairly. Some of our old clients donated. People I'd brought into the company in the first place were giving him money to fight charges that stemmed from him stealing from me. The irony was almost funny. Almost. Mom stopped talking to me entirely. Dad would call occasionally, asking how I was doing, but the conversations were short and awkward. Most of the family had chosen sides, and I was alone on mine. I thought about dropping it, calling the IRS, telling them I'd made a mistake, that I wanted to withdraw my complaint. I didn't care about the whistleblower money. I just wanted my family back. But then, I'd remember standing outside that office, trying my key in a lock that had been changed without warning. I'd remember the panic attacks, the debt, the shame. I'd remember Trevor's face when he told me it was just business. And I'd remember that I hadn't created this situation. I'd just stopped letting him hide from it. The indictment came down on a Monday morning. Federal charges for tax evasion, fraud, and money laundering, 15 counts. The prosecution had found even more than I'd given them. Trevor had been doing this since before I'd even made him partner. He'd been stealing from his own company, from our clients, from the government, for years. The news hit the local papers. Local entrepreneur charged with tax fraud. There was Trevor's photo, the same headshot he used on LinkedIn. He looked confident in it, successful. The article mentioned that the investigation had begun with a tip from a former business partner. They didn't name me, but everyone knew. My phone exploded with messages, half telling me I was a traitor, that I'd destroyed my own brother over jealousy, half saying I'd done the right thing, that Trevor got what he deserved. I didn't respond to any of them. Trevor's trial was set for 8 months later. In the meantime, he was out on bail. I saw him once during that period, at our grandmother's funeral. We stood on opposite sides of the church, didn't speak. Mom sat with him. Dad sat between us, literally and figuratively trying to keep the peace. At the reception, an aunt I barely knew pulled me aside. "You should be ashamed of yourself," she said. "That's your brother. Family doesn't do this to family." "He did it first," I said. "So you're no better than him," she replied. Maybe she was right. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I was called to testify. Had to sit in that witness box and lay out everything I'd found, everything Trevor had done. Had to look at him while I did it. He stared at me the entire time, his expression unreadable. The prosecution's case was airtight. Trevor's lawyers tried to argue that he'd made mistakes, that it was poor bookkeeping, not intentional fraud. But the evidence was too clear. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, guilty on 13 of 15 counts. He was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison and ordered to pay back taxes, penalties, and fines totaling over $600,000. The company was dissolved, assets seized. Mom collapsed in the courtroom. Dad had to help her out. Neither of them looked at me. I sat in the back row and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, just tired. Trevor was taken into custody immediately. As they led him away, he turned and looked at me one last time. I couldn't read his expression. Anger, regret, acceptance? I don't know. I'll never know. The whistleblower payment came through 6 months later. $240,000. The IRS had recovered over $1 million from Trevor's hidden accounts, and I was entitled to a percentage. I used some of it to pay off the debts he'd left me with. Gave half of what was left to my parents for all the support they'd given me, even when they were disappointed. They didn't want to take it at first, but I insisted. The rest, I put it away. I didn't feel like I'd earned it, even though legally I had. I moved out of my parents' house, got a small apartment, started freelancing again, doing the same work I'd done when I first started the business. Small clients, small projects, rebuilding from zero. Mom started talking to me again about a year after the trial. Short conversations at first. She didn't mention Trevor, and neither did I. We talked about the weather, about her garden, about nothing important. But it was something. Dad and I went fishing one Saturday. Sat on the dock for hours, not catching much. Finally, he said, "I don't know if you did the right thing or the wrong thing, but I know you did what you thought you had to do. That takes courage." It was the closest he'd come to saying he understood. I visited Trevor once in prison. I don't know why. Closure, maybe. Or maybe I just needed to see him one more time. Needed to know if there was anything left of the brother I used to know. We sat across from each other in the visiting room, phones to our ears, glass between us. He looked different, older, smaller. "Why'd you come?" he asked. "I don't know," I said honestly. We sat in silence for a long time. Then Trevor said, "I was jealous of how easy everything came to you. Building the business, making money, being the golden child. I wanted that. I wanted to be the successful one for once." "So you took it," I said. "I took it," he agreed, "and I ruined both our lives in the process." "Yeah." More silence. "Do you hate me?" he asked. I thought about it. Really thought about it. "No," I said finally. "I don't hate you. I don't really feel anything anymore." He nodded slowly. That's worse, isn't it? Than hate. Probably. We talked for another 10 minutes about nothing. The weather, prison food, whether Dad would ever forgive either of us. Then visiting hours ended. "I'm sorry," Trevor said as I stood to leave. "For what it's worth. I'm sorry." I nodded. I didn't say I forgave him because I wasn't sure I did. But I heard him. That was 2 years ago. Trevor's scheduled to be released in 14 months. I don't know what happens then. I don't know if we'll ever be brothers again, or if that door is closed forever. The business I'm building now is smaller, simpler. Just me, no partners. I don't dream as big as I used to. I'm more careful, more guarded. Maybe that's sad, maybe that's growth. I'm still figuring it out. Some people tell me I did the right thing. That corruption shouldn't be protected, even when it's family. Some people tell me I destroyed my brother over revenge, that I should have found another way. I still don't know which group is right. What I do know is this: trust is fragile. Once it's broken, it can't be put back together the same way. You can try to rebuild it, but there will always be cracks. And sometimes, the people closest to you are the ones who can hurt you the worst, because you never see it coming. Trevor taught me to protect myself, even from family, especially from family. And that lesson cost both of us everything. I don't regret what I did, but I don't celebrate it either. I just live with it, like you live with a scar. It's part of my story now, part of who I am, and maybe that's enough. If this story resonated with you, if you've been through something similar, or if it made you think, I'd appreciate if you'd like this video and subscribe. Not for me, but because these stories matter. They show us we're not alone in the complicated, messy, painful parts of being human. Thanks for listening to mine.